robberies and burglaries and other crimes. If they were there, more time than some people who had killed people. So there's that. There's nonviolent offenders. You have the elderly in prison whose advanced medical needs can't be dealt with by the prison. The prison's not equipped to deal with that. There were prisoners there who were back on technical parole violations, meaning that they were back in prison doing a year, doing 2 years, because they broke curfew. They got home 5 minutes ahead of time. They didn't tell the parole officer about their change of address. Do I think it's important to follow the rules? Yeah, of course I do. Should there be a consequence if you don't? Yes, there should. Should that consequence be being sent back to prison? No, it should not. Incarceration is not the answer to everything. We have prisoners that, have been rehabilitated, who've committed very serious crimes. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years previous to that. We're not the same people anymore. And that seems to me to be a really nice segue into just discussing the parole process. A lot of prisoners who can demonstrate their innocence, they would go to the parole board, and it wouldn't matter what type of rehabilitation they could demonstrate. It wouldn't matter the programs they completed. It wouldn't matter what type of programs they've engaged in, including programs that benefit society. It doesn't matter the vocational and therapeutic programs or the disciplinary records. They would be denied parole strictly on the nature of the crime. But that was known on day one. That was known before the first day in prison. As a society, we claim that we believe in rehabilitation. But how is denying somebody release based on a crime many years ago who can show rehabilitation? How are we showing belief in rehabilitation if we're denying people parole based upon the offense that they were originally convicted and sentenced of? The judge already took that into consideration. So that aspect of it is definitely not fair. Changing gears. I want to discuss briefly a few ideas on prison reform on topics that I haven't discussed before. So we need to separate youth from adults. I was convicted as an adult, although I was 17. I was sent to a men's maximum security prison. Very dangerous situation. I was in prison with many people who were guilty of committing very serious violent crimes. Let's be for real. I can pretend I'm macho and brave and all this. What am I going to do at 17, 150 pounds, against a grown man in prison who's committed very serious acts of violence? Nothing. I was not in position to be able to defend myself. I was a target at times. I was beat up many times. So I think that, youth and adults should be separated. I think vulnerable populations, such as people with mental health issues and people who've been convicted of sex offenses, they should be put in a different housing unit or a different prison altogether because of the likelihood of abuse. People that security identify as potential targets or vulnerable, they should be separated. We need to separate people convicted of violent offenses from non-violent offenses. And I would separate the violent people incarcerated for violence. I would separate them. There's people that have been convicted of violent crimes, but they're not conducting themselves violent while they're in prison. So that's a separate class of prisoner altogether than prisoners who want to continue to act violently. So there were times when me and other people that I knew, we were forced to defend ourselves against other people who were conducting themselves violently. We're not going to let anyone beat us up. We're going to do the best that we can, win, lose, or draw. But you're making it more likely that we're going to be involved in violence if you're not doing this type of separation. The food needs to be better. There's not enough religious freedom. I remember in prison, the people were practicing the Catholic faith, and they weren't allowed to go to services, and the Protestants and the Jewish people would have services, the Muslims would have services. They didn't have any services for anybody else. They didn't have services for people that might have been of the Hindu faith or Buddhist faith. Or these just a few come off the top of my head. Many different laws. People of different religion, Indian beliefs. So we need to have religious freedom. I think that, and again, prisoners believing in God in whatever form of faith, that's more consistent towards rehabilitation than not. So I don't think the state should be hindering people from having religious freedom. I think in the prison where I was at, I remember the Jewish prisoners, they had kosher meals, and virtually every meal was cold. It had to be just during a special holiday where they were given something warm. Other than that, it was all cold. It was all cold cuts and tuna fish. And there was no reason why that some facilities couldn't have been made for them to enjoy a hot meal.
Stop. Yeah. Stop. Yeah. Stop.